Stubby Nails Club. Welcome to the top 3 reasons why your stress urinary incontinence clients aren't getting any better. Number 1, you're not addressing their constipation symptoms. So as we know, constipation and the urinary system are closely related. If we just think about where the vaginal vault is located to where the bladder is located in the front, anterior to that, and where the rectum is located, these 3 structures all fall within the pelvic bowl and they're quite close to each other. So that if there were to be a very stuck stool in that rectal compartment, it really does impact the vaginal vault and may create some pain and pressure during sex, but also the bladder component, in that when there is a very big intra-abdominal pressure moment, like a cough, sneeze, jump, laugh, deadlift, vomit, at the middle of the squat position, in those scenarios, having a stuck stool there plus a full bladder could just tip your client over the edge into having that leak moment. And not to mention, having the stool there impacts hormonal flux and equilibrium in the system, as well as overactivity of the pelvic floor, as your pelvic floor is holding 5 pounds all the dang time. So really taking a look at someone's bowel history. Are they constipated? Are they having painful poops? Are they withholding poops? Is so key to managing stress urinary incontinence. Number 2, context matters. So what I mean here is we're not asking enough questions in the subjective history to understand why is it that there's a stress urinary leakage event. So oftentimes when we hear that someone is experiencing unwanted urinary leaks, our mind may immediately go to, they may have some pelvic floor weakness. They may have some pelvic floor overactivity. But before we just bring our thoughts to, okay, we got to treat the pelvic floor, hey, we got to strengthen the pelvic floor, we need to take a step back first and think about, wait a second, that's not a diagnosis. Why is the pelvic floor weak or tight or weak and flimsy or weak and uncoordinated in the first place? So having a clinical impression of your pelvic floor is weak and uncoordinated is not enough of a clinical impression. You really want to ask the question why. So when it comes to context, you want to be asking your clients, does this happen with a temporal effect? Like, is it happening in the morning after sleep? Is there something going on with their sleep position or the quality of their sleep, versus is this happening in the evening when they've fatigued out, they've had a really hard day, and those are the only scenarios where they're experiencing this stress leakage event. The other things you may need to ask is context in terms of which sport is it that they're leaking? What type of jump is it that they're taking? So jumping and leaking is also not enough information. Is it when they do a jumping jack and it's only when they do a jumping jack? Is it the point of the jumping jack where they're lifting off and pushing off the ground? Is it at the top of the jumping jack, or is it upon landing? And it may surprise you that different clients may have different answers to these questions. Is it only on a split lunge jump? Is it only after a box jump? So asking, is it the landing where they're experiencing the leakage, or when they clear the box jump? Having an idea of what their hip mechanics might look like, having them maybe demo this when they feel more confident, or having them demo this while wearing a pad may be appropriate depending on the scenario. But having an understanding of the context is so important to understanding what you could do to manage that specific case of stress urinary leakage. So don't forget to ask them all about the details, the timing of the leak, the context of the leak, the environment of the leak, their fatigue levels, sleep levels, constipation. All these things can contribute to the reasons why they're having that stress urinary leakage. Number 3, as I mentioned in number 2, we oftentimes don't ask enough questions about the context around someone's stress urinary leakage event. So this one sort of ties back into that. we may not be fundamentally understanding the true source of our client's urinary incontinence. So keep in mind that typically, at least from my experience, treating the pelvic floor muscles themselves is oftentimes not enough. We need to understand their past medical history. Is there a reason why their myofascial system is out of whack or moving towards a scar tissue from when they were a teenager and they had that shoulder injury and shoulder repair? Things like that can really make a difference in the treatment and the effectiveness of the treatment of which you perform to help their urinary incontinence. So asking about their unique individual history is going to be really important. And also, as you get more experience, you will find that certain stories are just more unique and will draw you towards treating certain things sooner rather than other things. So one of the ways in which I gather information to really find that true root source or root cause of that stress urinary incontinence is I really look for asking, when did these symptoms first appear? And if this is something that had started during childhood, then we need to go all the way back to asking, what was their lifestyle like during that time? Were they really stressed out for some reason? Was there trauma in the household? Or let's say this is something that developed over COVID-19. We need to be asking them, did you get COVID-19? Did you get a chronic cough? Do you have prolonged symptoms? Do you still have shortness of breath? And garner more information there. And as you can see, those two lines of questioning of when the onset of their stress urinary leakage was can really guide you and navigate you towards treating, maybe for the childhood one, is treating around stress management or constipation management, and maybe for the COVID-19 route, maybe treating more towards the breathing and breath mechanics, education around surrounding that. Again, it really depends. It needs to be uniquely tailored to the individual in front of you. So perhaps COVID-19 was when they had a surprise abdominal surgery and they had tons of infections to the site. And the moment you treat that scar tissue, that seems to be what resolves their stress urinary incontinence, or like significantly helps manage it. So getting an understanding of what was happening surrounding the onset of the urinary leakage, or asking them, hey, has this unwanted leakage events, have they become worse? Have they become more frequent, larger amount of loss of urine? And then again, asking those same questions. Well, what's really happened surrounding the last few months? Has it been more stressful at work? Have you been sitting more? Have you been more inconsistent at mobility and at your gym routine or movements? So really garnering an understanding around the onset and what seems to be those contributing factors for making the symptoms worse can guide you guys to understanding that those treatments towards those aggravating factors might be those key ingredients to really helping someone understand the root sources of their unwanted leakage.
Reason number 1. You didn't check how they are performing the activities that cause them leakage. For example, if your client is experiencing leaks during squatting, deadlifting, running, or even just lifting their baby from bed, you want to assess how they're actually performing those activities and what's their alignment like. So, are they squatting with the proper alignment, such as having the rib cage aligned with the pelvis? What is the movement strategy they use? Is it a quad dominant squat versus a glute dominant squat? What is their bracing strategy? Are they someone that contracts a lot from the abdominals and withholding their breath as they do their lift? If the alignment is off, is it just an awareness issue, or is there a lack of muscle strength or endurance that needs to be addressed somewhere? So all of these points can be helpful to us find the reasons why there is a lack of support for the pelvic floor muscle during these activities, and making sure that your client aren't just overloading their pelvic floor muscles during these movements that cause leaks. So make sure to check those out. Reason number 2. You've only given pelvic floor muscle exercises on the bed. If a client has leaks during jumping jacks, then you have to eventually progress your exercises into jumping. Always make the exercises challenging and pertinent towards your client's goals. Always remember to work your pelvic floor muscles with different movements and load them in different positions. The exercises have to be functional for your clients. So don't be that physio that just give pelvic floor muscle exercises on the bed. Reason number 3. You forgot to address the hyperactivity of the pelvic floor muscle before doing any strengthening exercises. When we talk about urinary leakage, we oftentimes think that there must be a lack of strength or endurance in the pelvic floor muscle, but sometimes that might not be the case. Your client might have a hyperactive pelvic floor muscle that is not able to fully relax itself throughout the day. As we know, the pelvic floor is a muscle that contracts with the change of intra-abdominal pressure. So if it's always contracting, then it won't be able to sense the difference in pressure and be able to react at the right timing to withhold RP. If that's the case, then you might need to work on downtraining the nervous system and relaxing the pelvic floor muscle before strengthening it.